This is Babastis. She says hi to everyone. She's complaining a lot. She wants to go outside.
Why don't you let her outside?
Because she's the one that disappears for a year, then comes back. So, it's like weird. I don't want to like really worry about her.
No.
I have a harness, but I let her get her exercise and sunlight, but it's too complicated right now. So,
Well, speaking of exercise and sunlight and getting health, that is what today's episode is on. Thank you for joining us. Seth has got the topic that we're going to be covering. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Obviously, you probably read the title, but besides that, we'll introduce everybody and we'll get right into it. I'm one of your hosts, Alex.
I'm Seth.
I'm Clark, aka the Reverend Michael Snakebite.
And I am Grindhouse Zombie.
And with that, Seth, tell us what we're going to be talking about today.
We're talking about health, fitness, longevity protocols today, and some of the memes out there with current events and public figures. I dropped in listener hangout room part of my protocol. I wasn't able to get all of it done, but that you guys can like read along if you want. We're gonna kind of bounce around a little bit. I want everyone. It's open for floor discussion. Just chime in if you guys have any questions or just want to say anything about anything. And where would you guys like to start? I mean, we got diet, we got certain types of longevity drugs, we've got all kinds of things.
This is where I would like to start, and if you guys agree with me or disagree with me, just let me know. You as the listener, if you're wondering where you can get to us on the Discord, if you go to podbean.com, you type in ThatsEffinWeird, our page will show up. There's a link to our Discord, so you can actually see what Seth's regiment is looking like when he's talking about this. I think that would be a good place to start. Let's use you, Seth, as like the baseline example, and then we can pull where you're getting from, or like what kind of examples, or why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Okay. I mean, I once in a while I'm asked like, why am I so like into this? But it's basically like I had like when I was younger, questionable mental health. I was obese. I had a whole bunch of like autoimmune issues, specifically autoimmune is basically just your immune system attacking itself. It's being inundated by multiple things that it doesn't know how to process, and so your immune system is on like heightened alert, as if there's constantly some kind of foreign invader or whatever. And so eczema, things like that can pop up because your body's essentially attacking itself. And then it was kind of like, over time, I partied a little too hard. So it was like this incremental thing of like, okay, well, I got to stop doing that because I was having like extremely adverse side effects from my lifestyle. And then it kind of like went in increments over time on how extreme it became. I've also had a ton of food sensitivities growing up. And so I'm like super sensitive to a lot of different foods. And so that is how I got into like intermittent fasting. And then through that, you see like with all the research out there, the different mechanisms and all the cool things that happen with intermittent fasting. And I just am a fan of that.
Seth, can you explain the intermittent fasting and what you mean by that?
Yeah. So personally, what I do is I eat once a day. It's usually between 7 or 8 p.m., something like that. There's a thing called there's a clock that starts every morning when you start your day. And I'm toying with the idea of starting my one meal a day at the start of the day rather than at the end. So like when you eat or actually consume anything other than just water, there's a systematic cascade of enzymes and everything that start activating in your body to process things and divvy up resources. And those enzymes follow kind of a natural 12-hour-ish clock, where once they start, they naturally start to wind down, kind of per your circadian rhythm. day and night cycles. So when that happens, if you were to, for instance, eat outside of that clock, you can run the risk of elevated cancer risks, inflammatory diseases, heart disease, all kinds of things down the line if you're reactivating those systematic enzymes and all that stuff to process all those things that your cells have to assimilate and divvy up. Like, one of the things is with intermittent fasting, you're clearing up a bunch of mechanical wear and tear on your cells. Every time you eat, your system has to allocate where that goes, break it down, and a whole bunch of stuff is activated. This is such a huge, I'm having trouble figuring out where to start. I can just, like, for me, it was like I was getting my systemic inflammation down by doing once a day eating. And then what I ate within that window was carefully selected. If anybody wants to kind of go down this road, there's a really good test called ALA-test. It's basically a blood test that takes a blood sample of yours and compares it to an entire list of food, like common foods and stuff. And you can see individually what your blood reacts to in terms of antigens and like things that you may or may not have mild allergies to. And then it's not that you just need to avoid them like the plague. It's just that using that as a guidepost, you can kind of reduce inflammation, which is just more wear and tear.
So I have a question for you, Seth. So now with you doing this intermittent fasting, is this something that you went to a dietitian, or is this something that on your own accord are choosing to do? Now, the only reason why I say that is because I'm looking online right now and it says from thebalancednutritionist.com, and this is coming from a registered dietitian named Jamie. I can post the link or whatever if you guys want, but in the article it says a good guideline for everyone to follow is that you should eat every 3 to 4 hours. Now, I guess what I'm wondering is, would that be a better guideline to follow than this intermittent fasting? I guess, how often do you do the intermittent fasting? Is this something where this is your life, where you do this fasting, or is this only like a chunk, like a week at a time, or like 2 weeks at a time you do this and then you're back onto like a normal eating schedule?
I have been eating like this every day since about 2015 or 16, somewhere in there. So outside of obviously like holidays and things that are hard to socially avoid, I'm not going to be that strict. You got to cut loose every now and then and all of that. But generally speaking, I've been doing this for years, every single day.
So I have a quick question when it comes to what you were just saying there. So when you do quote unquote cut loose, because I honestly think that you can train your body to be okay with a lot of things. And I'm not going to go on the ledge of saying is one wrong, is one right, because that's not up to me. Everyone's an individual. They got to figure out their own things. But do you find with this, because I think it's safe to call it your lifestyle. If you go to Thanksgiving dinner and you overeat, do you get the equivalent of a hangover from it? Do you notice really negative effects?
Yeah. So, and it's not just that. If there's anything where I'm eating outside of my normal time frame or the kind of food that I do eat, I get sleepy and I get bloated and I'm just like not having any of it. So, like when I work, I do a mixed bag of manual labor. I prefer not to eat during the day because if I eat, I will get really slow. I'll just want to nap and lounge around. That's what happens to me personally. Now, if I were to do what I was talking about earlier, where it was like maybe I'll play with starting my one meal at the beginning of the day, so I don't ever run the risk of being outside of that enzyme clock. There's going to be a little bit of a kind of my system's going to have to go through that to get back to that normal. I don't know. But right now, I'm not worried too much about it. But yeah, basically what you're saying, I absolutely have consequences if I eat more than I'm used to or something I'm not used to. Like I can't drink like stuff like soda anymore. The one rare time I do, a massive amount of bloatage and I'm just so thirsty. I just generally feel like trash after I do like anything that's straight up sugar, which is a run. You know, when you're at a holiday party, like that's always around. And I really like my aunt's macaroni and cheese that they make. So.
Clark, what do you think about all this?
Well, I've already kind of scrolled down through the thing. I'm kind of more interested in some of the medicines, vitamins, and things like that. So I'll get to that part more when we get there. But as far as like on the surface, like I kind of get that when you drastically change a diet or also forcing your body type, I guess, against its will sometimes to change. Because I do still believe there's a lot of genetic factors that no matter how well you take care of yourself, sometimes genetics are going to win at the end of the at the end of the day or end of the battle, I guess, because you could probably take care of yourself best you can. You might drop dead at 60 or something.
Yeah.
But and then like I said, the same thing on the opposite end. You can be Ozzy Osbourne and just punish your body, and you're gonna
Yeah.
live to the 80s. So like you never really can predict what's going to happen to your body. But I will say from my own personal experience and kind of going with the whole like food hangover thing is all I can think of is like my own college experience where I came out as a more built body type out of high school. I was about 195 and I was going to college to play baseball. And when I got there, they basically said, "Hey, guess what? You're never going to hit again. You're a pitcher. So don't do the things you're doing. This is now your workout. This is now your diet." And I dropped like 30 pounds. I got down to like 163 in like 4 months, 3 or 4 months, and it was all like muscle. But it was such a drastic change to my body because basically I almost put myself into keto before keto was like a thing. Like I didn't even know that's what it was doing, but like I dropped weight so fast and everything, but maintained muscle. That the first time I ate something that was like really rich, it was actually I remember exactly what it was. It was Chinese food. My body just kicked it back. Like I vomited like almost immediately after eating, just because it was way too rich for my body to handle after just drastically changing my entire diet over a period of like 5-6 months. So yeah, I definitely understand that like your body will adapt, it readjust, and then yeah, just kind of it'll get so used to that that you can't go back to that other lifestyle, or you have to gradually get back into stuff like that. So
Yeah. I when we're talking about this too, and it's what is really astonishing with you saying that you do this intermediate fasting, and when I was looking at your chart or the PDF file that you dropped, was the workouts then that you do as well, as far as like the cardio, your full body workouts. Now for you, and then on top of that, you say that you do a mix of like manual labor and like mental labor, like, probably behind a computer, or, you have to use your brain power rather than physical. How does that all play in then in all of this as well? Do you find it that you need like an apple, or you need like some sort of snack after the workout?
No. So the only time like, if there's a time where I'm like, food is starting to pop into my brain, generally speaking, I don't think about when I'm really on point and I'm eating once a day and it's really strict and I'm still in a calorie deficit when I do eat. I rarely think about food. The longest fast I went on, 0 food, was 16 days. And past like the 3-4 day mark ish, somewhere in there, you really stop thinking about food. Like you don't. Now once you get past like a certain point and you're in like, week 2 or whatever, I was having crazy dreams about food. I remember that pretty vividly. But I wasn't like, it was weird. Something happens after a certain point, and I'm glad that Clark brought that up about the genetics and background and everything. And generally speaking, despite genetics, I mean, there's so much adaptability play within that. But what's really interesting is in a lot of like the fasting studies and general things like that, I forget the name, that there was a tribe that was followed around by researchers, and generally what they did was they would hunt for several days without any like food to speak of. Like there were beverages and things to kind of keep you going day to day, but generally speaking they weren't eating every single day. And then when there would be a big kill, there would be eating. And like with that kind of hunting, you're eating a lot of saturated animal based fats and proteins, and then organ meats. They don't let organ meats go to waste, so you've got like a bunch of like heme iron and bioavailable B vitamins and etc. And they were very lean, but could tolerate treks for hunting, whereas the Westerners that were following them around could barely handle it all, because they were going through like such extreme things with their not eating. Their body was like having to adapt to it. So that's fascinating in and of itself. What's really interesting is it was originally thought at 3 days of fasting, but it's really closer in between 3 to 5 days of total caloric fasting, that your body switches into an autophagy phase, which is just a fancy Latin word for saying self-eating. Your body starts prioritizing dead or damaged cells that are like not really alive, not really dead, and they're called senescent cells that just kind of hang out. And what's the problem with senescent cells is they start secreting these really bad chemicals that signal to the other cells around, and those other cells start misfiring and acting strange. So senescence kind of spreads when one cell is acting faulty. It kind of locally spreads a little bit. This is kind of the same way cancers and tumors work. And what's really interesting in terms of like hair graying, localized hair follicles. So like if you're starting to have a senescent cell in like your scalp, which I've got like some gray hairs peppered throughout on the sides of especially if there's damage. I have some scars on the back of my head. The damaged cells, when that happens around hair follicles, the weird chemical secretions and like inflammatory markers that are being sent out to all the other cells around it, for some reason, when those senescent cells start to spread, if a hair follicle is nearby it, for whatever reason, it starts stripping its ability to form pigments, which then you get gray hairs and like a different kind of hair structure, because gray hair isn't just gray. It like changes. It's like a little more coarse. It changes how it is. It's not as soft. Anyway, so how it synthesizes changes, and throughout some of the stuff, which will come to Bryan Johnson because that whole thing is just hilarious. But in all of the things that he's been doing, there has been a reduction of localized hair follicles being stripped of pigment, and he's getting more natural. Now he colors his hair. We're all vain a little bit, but there has been an increase in color in some of the hair follicles. Bringing up Bryan Johnson, I want to quickly throw out, and I'll throw this in the Discord so that listeners can look up. There's a few names. If I were to say, if anyone was interested in longevity pathways and research, there's a handful of people. There's Dr. Rhonda Patrick, which does amazing work in sauna use, sulforaphane. But the resources I would say is Dr. Rhonda Patrick, Dr. David Sinclair, which does longevity research with nicotinamide mononucleotide, NAD stuff, which has to do with core energy within cells. And then Andrew Huberman, and then you've got like Bryan Johnson and stuff like this. So anyway,
Seth, I gotta ask, because this, I don't know if Clark and Grindhouse are thinking this, but I've been thinking this since I read your thing, because this is what it says, is the purpose of this life extension and disease resistance. With current protocols and technology, I believe the average life expectancy can be raised to 90 through 100 plus years. Now, is that saying on top of what humans already live to, or are you saying that the average can be 90 to 100?
Oh, just the average lifespan.
Okay.
Yeah.
First, okay. This is my question. Why would you want to live to be that long? Have you seen
that's
have you
that
have you
mindset?
seen
I
80?
guess. See, that's why I said disease resistant. So there's all right, because you're still thinking in terms of someone getting to 80 and having our current 80-year-old ailments. What I'm saying is
Yeah.
that 90 to 100, then those ailments start showing up. Those age-related ailments showing up. Basically, so this is going to get into rapamycin and mTOR. What I'm saying is not only because at the end of that, I said that the object isn't to live forever. It's to live long and die fast. I don't want to be a burden on my loved ones. I don't want to be feeble and half there. Believe me, if it meant like from 80 and then you add 40 years, I don't want like that much being senile that long. That's ridiculous. No, what I'm saying is that we're kicking the can down the road to where the average lifespan is extended, but also age-related illness is also because if you think about it, aging is just the build up of damage that isn't being cleared in real time. When you're younger, you are still accumulating genetic and cellular damage, but you are fixing it at a much higher rate. Once you get to a certain age now, you're accumulating that damage and probably some more, but your ability to rebound and correct that damage is decreasing at a alarming rate. So
Okay. Go ahead. Go. No. Finish what you're going to say.
so basically, if it's just an accumulation of damage, if you were to take an 80-year-old and that amount of cellular degradation was being fixed at the same rate that it was occurring, you would have someone that would look much younger despite their chronological age. So
Here's the thing though, is with all of this going on, is the mind
I mean,
because
it's the
that's
same thing.
so
It's
the
still made
mind
up of a bunch of cells. It's still part of. So I know what you're saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to okay, because tell me if I'm right or wrong, but you look at the mind of like a 70 or 80 now if you're 70 or 80, I'm not hating on you at all, but you're not as sharp as a 20 or 30-year-old. I think we can all agree. Now if you're saying that with these protocols we can make that the new like 70 or 80 is the 90 or 100, is the mind going to stay as sharp, or is that something where the brain and how we operate, it just deteriorates faster and there's nothing we can do to keep it sharp? Because physically, yes, we could maybe look look younger and continue on, but if your brain is mush, what's the point? You know what I mean?
That's the thing. If you're repairing and facilitating an environment for optimum cell function, your brain is no different than your liver. Now you've got the added obstacle of the blood-brain barrier and a few challenges there. I'll point to a faulty study where certain classes of drugs were issued out as a result. When we talk about something like amyloid plaque buildup or whatever, it was thought a long time that a lot of dementia and Alzheimer's related things. So when you have neurons and those nerves are firing, that's thought. I mean, it's a giant network of these things going on, which is logging memory, is processing information in different regions of your brain in different networks of nerve bundles. But the basic thing is between those nerves in the synapses, there's plaques that build up, amyloid, beta amyloid plaques, and etc. And that is a byproduct of thought. But if you abuse something like cocaine or amphetamines, your brain your cognitive speed up is outstanding, but the problem is you're accumulating way more plaque buildup between those synapses because everything is firing faster. That being said, the root cause of Alzheimer's is multifaceted. So there's a whole bunch of faulty stuff that had to do with issuing out a drug for Alzheimer's that had to do with amyloid plaque research. But generally speaking, I think that is a very good that still has credence, because the plaque buildup, there's still something going on there. It may not be the main pathway, but it is a piece in a puzzle. So let's just kind of look at that for a second. When do you clear plaque buildup within neurons inside the brain? It's sleep. You can increase the cranial pressure because during a certain stage in your sleep, the brain actually swells. It's either the brain stem or part of the brain where your brain is undergoing clearing out of all of this stuff. So there's a really cool kind of hack you can do where you can, at night, you can put like a pillow under your mattress to elevate your legs, which increases the cranial pressure at night during the sleep stage to clear out more plaques. So going back to what you were saying, the brain is just another lump of cells and biology that follow the same rules. If it was accumulating damage at a slower rate and that damage was being rectified at close to we're not close to real time, but you know what I mean. If it was still being cleared at a reasonable rate, your brain deterioration would just be as slow as whatever else you're working on: liver, heart, kidneys, lungs, full body cellular activity. It's just all the same thing. Now, then there's the argument, of like memories and etc. Like however you expend, and me and Clark have touched on this with vampirism, the longer you live, and how memory works. I generally think there's a ticking clock on all of these pathways. It gets so complicated, and there's so many multiple routes. It's going to end eventually, but the main thing is that I think that it would work similarly to how there's a bunch. The further you go back in time in your development, memories become hazier, misremembered, etc. And so you're pushing that time where you're remembering and thinking forward to the future and everything. I think it works the same way, but there will eventually be a decline. So,
okay, all right.
I have a question about
Yeah.
life expectancy, just kind of in general, and how that's ebbed and flowed over time. So going back to say 1900, the average life expectancy was about 47 years old. Other than a few blips in history, one of them being 1918, I'm sure everyone knows why, when the life expectancy went down to 39 briefly. It has effectively trended upwards. I mean, over the course of time, going from effectively 47 to about 78 point something years. One of the interesting things then is, again, because of a very predictable thing, for the first time in forever, the average life expectancy in pretty much every country in the world went down anywhere from 1.5 years to 4 years. And I think we, again, all know why that was in 2020. So understanding that, with all these protocols and all these things, and you saying that you expect to see a palatable, a perceptible shift in what we define almost as, call it old age, I guess, and how part of what you're trying to do, and this is just me trying to understand, so I'm just working it through my brain. You're trying to perceptively move what we see as old age to further down the road.
Yeah.
And by doing that, keeping the younger, healthier, more energetic you to what is effectively a completely different stage of life. And that's so okay. So overall, I mean, this is super interesting. And I like Alex's point of, well, why would you want to live that long? But at the same time, if that's your goal, is to perceptibly move that scale out 10 or 15 or 20 years, I can see that as being, I mean, not only reasonable, but be perfectly honest, very desirable. If you can still be active and healthy and thinking, I mean, I look at my wife's grandmother. We just had her 90th birthday. This lady is sharper than I am and has more energy than I do. So granted, I think she's probably a blip on the scope. I don't think every 90-year-old is quite that way. But at the same time, it does change my perception of what old age is and what I expect it to be for me. Now, I'm sitting here drinking caffeine and smoking cigarettes while we're talking about. I understand my future. I'm okay with it. I've made my decisions. But it does make me think, and maybe not an umbrella lifestyle change, but, saying that you've been doing this lifestyle since 2016 and I'm assuming you're to a point now where it's just a matter of course. It's not something that you think about every day. It's just what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that in my head is the more monumental shift than anything else, is changing what you do and changing into a new lifestyle. That I think is the hardest part of it, because I think about changing my lifestyle and it's like, oh God, that would just be a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of not just saying I want to age gracefully, but actually sliding the scale. I love that idea.
I think, Clark, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's kind of an addendum to that. It's not really a rebuttal to anything, but like I don't know, just something sitting there between what we just heard between Seth and Grindhouse. He kind of touched on it, but it was something that was sitting in my mind. Is we're also basing this on a baseline human being. We'll just say C's across the board. They're not outstanding in any given area or deficient in any area. So that's another thing, is like, not judging the lifestyle. I think it's a noble cause that everyone should maybe strive for, just to want to better yourselves. And I think we've, as a society, kind of done that, because back when I was in the band, like I feel like I was in the last generation of bands that were like, woohoo, party, like get hammered, drink a pint before you're even on sound check and stuff like that. Now, like all the bands you run into, they're all like super straight edge and healthy. And it seems like you don't see that, kind of lifestyle anymore. But yeah, like I said, we're kind of, it seems like no matter what you do, and I'm not going to base on the genetic thing too, but I still have questions about the genetic part of it. But yeah, like if you're basing that on someone who, like I said, is just right in the middle, average, and yeah, I think it trends to work. But I think that there's too many variables of like things that are out of your control. Like if you come out of the womb and you're not 100%, if you have a mental, disorder, illness, whatever of any kind or something like that, how much does that take into effect? Because you're keeping a brain that's already, flawed. I'm not saying you're a bad person for having something like that. I mean, we all have anxiety or depression or something, but if you have a inherent flaw, aren't you just maintaining? You're not bettering that brain, or are you just maintaining for a longer period of time? It's kind of going back to the Alzheimer's.
So like if you have like a genetic predisposition to like schizophrenia or something, and you're saying that you're just prolonging that suffering, is that what I'm picking up?
No, I'm not even calling it suffering necessarily. I'm just saying you are technically, aren't you? Isn't the idea of this to, like say, keep your cells as healthy as possible? Keep basically like we're not taking in genetic death right now. We're not talking about telomeres and shortening and stuff like that. We'll get into that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as actually cellular like degradation and preventing as much of that as possible, yeah, I mean, kind of, aren't you just maintaining? Like, it's not going to make that person. Like, do you think some of these like regimens can actually make someone better, or do you think it's is that cellular? Like I said, are all you ever going to be the best that you can be is what you were kind of born as, and you're just prolonging that?
Right. No, I completely think that let's say you have a genetic predisposition to some kind of mental uh, uh, burden of some various form. I absolutely think that if everything is functioning at optimum, like you're just functioning extremely well, that you're going to have a massive reduction in symptoms. I'll give you an example. OCD and a few other things run in my family a bit. And growing up, I had very debilitating OCD, to where everything was being checked, everything was in rows and order, locks and lights and faucets and all kinds of things. I would stare in the mirror and repeat mantras of things that I would be afraid of, like when I was a kid, like things that would be like a horrible idea. I would repeat like these things, and if I didn't say it quite right, I had to repeat it and repeat. It was like very debilitating OCD. So I mean, there's so many pathways to mental health. So like one of the main huge factors is gut biome health. There's been a lot of compromised gut biomes where there are certain types of bacteria that secrete chemicals that cause direct brain inflammation. Some of that has been linked to certain types of spectrums in like in autism spectrum. Not to say it's just that one pathway, but it's one. So if one of the things that they find in more and more, there's more of a percentage of people that are on some kind of spectrum like that, and a lot of autoimmune is found in tandem with that, especially inflamed gut linings, extremely compromised gut biomes, and in turn, the central nervous system is inflamed, causing brain inflammation. And we know that this can occur in things like encephalitis, with massive brain inflammation can cause basically schizophrenic symptoms. Like I believe, what was that one? There was one thing I got that very much mimicked that. It was a massive infection I got right after a water park in Kentucky. I got a massive case of Clostridia, and I had to go to a custom pharmacy where they did blending. It was like they made this really specific cocktail of antibiotics to solve that. During that time, I was insane. Like I was just at my worst. So I think that there are a bunch of what you name the mental disorder, and I think there's a whole bunch of things that go into it ultimately being what it is. But I think that there are a lot of pathways that can be corrected and dramatically improved to where symptoms and suffering can be massively reduced. I look at myself on a lighter end of that scale and know that at least in my situation, I was able to dramatically fix certain things. And I'd also have this annoyance where my early 20s, I feel like I wasted a lot of time. And I like this whole thing of the idea of genetic age versus chronological age, because of all the things that I've done, even before getting on some of the drug product protocols that we'll talk about in a minute, I feel like I'm buying a little bit of that time back and extending my prime years. There is a really cool company called HealthSpan that I'll also link in the description. It's a telehealth organization that will provide 4 drugs for you. One is metformin, rapamycin, which is arguably the most important, low dose naltrexone, and acarbose. They also complimentary. You get like a shipment of pharmaceuticals every 3 months. You can set your own time where you want stuff to get into your mail. They send a complimentary blood work panel that you just go to your local LabCorp, get blood drawn. It's included in the price. And they go through all these markers, A1C, triglycerides, hormones, just a whole myriad of things we know that are points in aging and all of that. So my biological age coming back, but because when you start these drugs, you have to get a baseline of what it was your blood is doing before rapamycin and naltrexone and metformin. And then you are on it for about 3 or 4 months, and then you get another complimentary blood panel to see where you're at. My baseline biological age was 22. I am 34. So now that is based on there's about 3 main researchers. They send you a whole thing of literature. All of the way they determine that number is like this ever shifting thing. It's based on 3 main researchers and a few other universities, and then they kind of approximate your genetic age. From 22, the updated one, they're constantly adding updated because the panel of data is increasing dramatically because this kind of thing is becoming more and more popular now. So they're getting way more data in. Last time I checked, that number got adjusted to 24, which I'm still fine with, but that number shifts around as more information comes in. So we can get into, and also I want Clark to pipe in when we get into some telomeres, because I know you're familiar with that. And so the way I work in terms of researching this, I get like super honed in and hyper focused on one thing, research it to death, and then create some kind of protocol that becomes second nature to me. And then like as I go to the next thing to research, a lot of the peripheral information starts kind of being thrown out by my brain because I'm focused on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I always get confused because when in the process of trying to get your cells to divide less, and those chromosomes within your cells being transferred with your epigenetics and everything, and that cell division, telomeres get shorter, etc. Now, there are some peptides that have been developed to lengthen telomeres, other drugs that lengthen telomeres. The part that's starting to get hazy to me, and I used to know this, is if you keep adding length to those telomeres to where the genetic information isn't being lost within the chromosomes, the one thing they're finding in animal studies is the more you kind of artificially keep that cell immortal, you are increasing the risk of cancers and tumorous growth, because there are some uncontrollable like kind of data degradation in that genome that are being transferred in a copy of a copy, and then you start getting bizarre things. And we can keep a cell immortal by constantly dividing. The problem is keeping the information within the cell clean, so we don't have cancer pop up. Now that has to do with telomeres and epigenetics, and that's some of the stuff that my mind has leaked out, and you can probably enlighten us on that. So if you want to do that now, we can do it, because I will start switching over to mTOR and these drug classes.
I mean, you pretty much summed it up, and I'm not going to say what my own personal theory on lengthening telomeres basically in perpetuity is going to lead to, because I'm writing a book on it, and I'm not going to spoil that.
Okay.
So I won't say my own personal thoughts on what that might lead to, but yeah, essentially, you're making cell death or genetic death within cells is basically like making a copy of a copy. You keep copying, and eventually it fades away. I mean, that's what you do. You keep running the same document through a copy machine, and then run that copy through a copy machine, and then run that copy through a copy machine. That's what you're basically doing. And it's going to get shorter and shorter. Now, if some people would think, now that we've mapped the human genome, theoretically, if you could prevent that genetic death, then yes, you could basically artificially create immortality. That's the, I guess you would call the first theory, baby step theory, I guess, into looking into this stuff. And that's what makes it so desirable for a lot of people, is because that opens the mind to starting to think about like, oh, what could we do to actually do this? But once again, going back to keeping the body healthy and not preventing, genetic death, that to me is kind of like doing a frame off restoration on a car that still has 300,000 miles on it. It looks great, but it's not running well. So
and that's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say the brain is going to turn to mush.
Well, but I think if you look at the program as a whole and what they're trying to do, that's part of what they're trying to prevent. So I had a couple of points. I'll go through them quick while they're still in what's left of my pile of mush. So first of all, I can see, somebody who understands OCD, because I've got some of that too. I can honestly see this lifestyle really lending to, just by virtue of your lifestyle, helping to alleviate a lot of those symptoms. The stupid little stressors of life, the going to the grocery store, the meal plan, just all the dumb little things that we have to do. I can see that taking a lot of that away. I can also see the reality of people getting into these things and studying these things, and where the R&D money goes and all that kind of stuff. I said this before, and I'll always stand by it. We don't know what we don't know until we know it. But somebody has to study it, and somebody has to get the information. And it sounds like the company you're talking about is doing just that. And then the big third point is that knowing what I know about the world and all the organizations that we have, and trying to keep people alive longer, the reality of drugs and medications and medical research is the companies have already figured out that treating symptoms is far more lucrative than curing things. And so I don't think the drive and the money is there to quote unquote cure death, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, if you umbrella this whole thing, it's something that man has been looking for in perpetuity for ages, and it's the fountain of youth. It's really what it is. And there's historical explorers going back to even Ponce de Leon that was looking for the fountain of youth. I think it's an inherent in man to do it, and it's interesting to me. It's genuinely interesting. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass that you have engaged in this lifestyle and that you're pursuing it and that you take it very seriously. And despite, I mean, we talk about Bryan Johnson and whatever else. I got some comments on that guy, let me tell you. And from an outsider's perspective, I'll be honest, it's pretty easy to laugh at, right? And kind of sneer at and go, well, what are you doing? But again, it's not my lifestyle. I don't have to live it. It seems like those people are getting results. And I'll say what I said before. Not everybody has $2 million a year to spend on that, so good for you. But yeah, I'm curious to talk about those guys. But I honestly, everything that I read about this, and even if there's a little piece of it, especially with the Johnsons, that is inherently a little bit creepy. That's the creepy part of it. But I think the rest of it, honestly, is just it's fledgling science. It's the bleeding edge, and that's where we should always be. We should always be on the bleeding edge. If we're not on the bleeding edge, we've stopped and we don't care anymore. And so, why not just keep researching? And to be perfectly honest, if it's what works for you, and it seems like it does, fuck it, live your life and do it. It sounds like it's perfect for you. I mean, and the results that I've seen, I've looked at a couple of studies and a couple of people that have run through some of these protocols. It does seem like the results are pretty obvious. I mean, it's in both just physical appearance, how you are doing medically overall, weight loss, energy levels. It seems like it's all there. It's just, how do I motivate myself to do it at this point?
Yeah.
Seth. How long are you trying to live? What's your goal, man? Like, I'm curious.
I think if I can keep away from dementia and other kind of plagues like that where life is miserable, I think that 120 is not an unreasonable age. Hey, no, like, listen, like, yeah, but you take the average lifespan, or the fact, I think my grandmother passed away at 94. If you were to take that back to whatever era, that would look ridiculous to them. So I think that with, like, the thing is, if you talk to some of these people in Silicon Valley with a ton of money and they're doing all this stuff, they're flying to Costa Rica to get stem cells, they're doing all of this stuff. A lot of them are going to have these kind of delusional statements like, we can indefinitely keep you alive and reduce cellular damage while you're alive, so you don't have any kind of ailments, mental or physical. And I think that when you go down that road, I think that you are going the like Clark said, we've mapped the human genome, etc. There are so many pathways to so many things that are so bizarrely complicated that the smartest amongst us on the planet are bickering back and forth like children over how you go about this or that or what this is. And then once we figure something out, something else kind of challenges it and makes it complicated. I think that it's going to get so complicated at some point, there's always an expiration date. A lot of them look at things like starfish or certain things that produce asexually that are technically immortal cells. And, the old thing where we chose procreation versus asexual, division to be immortal. Like, if you look at all of humanity as a as a organism, one solid organism, how children look like their parents, they have some of the same traits, same thoughts, same inherited mental traits. You know, we're kind of like this giant multi-bodied single organism of humanity, whereas some organisms seem to, you just cut them in half and then they just grow back as two individual separate entities, which is really interesting. But I think that some of them are a little delusional in the idea that it's just you can indefinitely prolong it. There's a guy that now Google acquired him in his research. There's a documentary about him. He is this weird looking British guy that is convinced that through genetic engineering and fixing genetic damage in real time, both epigenetics and genetic damage and cellular decay in real time, that there is no time limit. I mean, look, I just think that that's going to get really complicated, and in our lifetime, we're not going to see that or whatever, if we ever even get to that kind of thing. But it doesn't guarantee that our sun isn't going to burn out and things like that. So it doesn't really matter. The point is that well, we can do some pretty amazing things while we're here. And my whole thing is like, I'm a kind of a eternal optimist. I think that it's fascinating, and why not? It's just exciting and interesting, and why not pioneer or be like part of a crowd that tries to pioneer the definition of aging, or whatever that is.
I think you answered my next question that I was going to ask you, which was, if this doesn't pan out, let's say like you get like to 80, 85, and you go to the doctor and they're like, hey man, you got like a month to live. Like you gave it your all. Would you feel like all of this was a waste of time? But you just kind of answered that with, you feel like you're a pioneer. You feel like you're testing the waters of this, because it is fairly new in the realms of research and like theory. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, how long has this been going on? Has this been like in the 70s, 80s that this has been going on, or is this fairly recently, like early 2000s, mid 2000s?
You mean this type of research?
Yeah, and like this sort of like
it's so multi-tiered.
Yeah.
Some older, some really new. Rapamycin has existed since, I believe, the 50s, and rapamycin was this kind of accidental discovery. It was a bacteria found on Easter Island called Rapa Nui. I mean, one of the islands is called Rapa Nui or something like that, and then the name of the bacteria was named after it. By the way, visit our merch store. 9 out of 10 Mo, I agree that you should take rapamycin. Anyway, so okay, all right. Right now, let's do this really cool thing where we let a good segue into the whole Bryan Johnson thing. Okay, when it comes to like these influencers or whatever, what I like about Bryan Johnson is that his protocol is completely open source. So yes, on the upfront, he's spent an enormous amount of money with this hobby, essentially. Like, look, if I like retired and I made close to $1 billion, I'd have some eccentric hobbies. I mean, that I would be enjoying things. So his hobby is just dumping a ton of money into all this stuff. One of the reasons he spent so money, and it's not his like, okay, if you were to do his protocol verbatim, you're looking at about $3,000 monthly in cost when it comes to drugs, diet, supplements, and some testing. Now, his testing is very advanced. That's where a lot of the money is going. One of the other things where the money is going is that he just bought basically a medical center that's in the upstairs of his house. Like, he has all of these state-of-the-art measuring devices and therapeutic medical machines of all types. And that's where a lot of the money is going. So it's not that like his lifestyle per se, you have to be spending $2 million a year or whatever. What's cool about him, and I know if anytime you get one central figurehead, like a influencer or a guru or whatever, you're going to have all kinds of weirdness. And the one problem with humans are we're tribal and we like to get on teams and camps, and it's unfortunate that things get culty and weird. But what I do like about him is that everything he's done, like 99% of what he's done, is published open source on his website. Everything he's taken, the stuff that has not worked, the things that have been altered, his supplement list, his diet, all his measurements, and he's like in the 1 percentile of like, 18 to like 22 of like so many different biomarkers. It's extremely impressive. So that's what I have to say about him. Now, I think it's just fun. I love the spectacle of things.
Seth, you said what you thought about him. Hey, Grindhouse, what do you think about him?
Well, okay, I've got a couple of thoughts. So my first honest thought is all these things that he's done, has any of it been subject to like peer review from the medical communities? And if it has, what has been like their take on the whole thing? Now, again, being an eccentric millionaire and being able to do these things, I mean, that's like, I get that. I probably would do some weird shit if I had millions of dollars to blow on nothing too. That said, this guy and his son, who he refers to as his blood boy, they're creepy as fucking hell. I mean, and if he's going to invest in anything in his house, he might want to put like a tanning booth in there because they look like goddamn vampires. They really do. But still, I mean, so yeah, he's weird. He's eccentric. Do I know that he's not on the cutting edge of something and in 50 years this will be the breakthrough? Of course I don't. I don't know that. I would like to see more, like I said, peer reviews, more medical input, on a general basis, just how these things could actually affect you and all these different things that he's doing, all these different supplements he takes and things like that. Again, I've seen a couple of different people that have, used his protocols, and the results honestly are nothing short of astounding, just in people's reported energy levels, the amount of weight that they lose. There was a point in time people thought Howard Hughes was nuts. So I think to Seth's point, yeah, when you become the spearhead of something like this, you also become a target for everybody. And that is just human nature. And people will come after you, and people like me will call you weird and that you look like a vampire and whatever else. But I don't have enough expertise on anything to say that these guys aren't about ready to crack open the fountain of youth. Maybe they are. I don't know. I think in the meantime, their social media presence is weird, creepy, just downright creepy, to be honest. But at the same time, if they're onto something, then maybe they're onto something. I would like to see more of it backed up by, and I know this is kind of a cop out, but I would like to see the established medical field review all of this and see what, 100 other doctors think, and if 90 of the doctors are like, well, looks pretty good. Well, it takes a lot of the weirdness out of it for me, so I just don't know if that's been done, if someone has really gone through this, or maybe this guy's honestly just insane and he has enough money to be crazy in the spotlight and it's okay.
And so here's my thing too, when we're talking about all this, Grindhouse, you said that recently, how old was you're the birthday of you said your grandmother?
My wife's grandmother, she just turned 90.
90. And she's probably not doing any of this regiment, is she?
I wouldn't say she's doing any of the regiment. I would tell you that she works out frequently. She plays golf 3 times a week still. She tries to eat fairly well. I'll also tell you that she loves gin. So, so that's the thing. It's like, and we say that, and I think Clark made the point, and it's like, you can do all of these things, but there's always going to be some sneaky factor that maybe you don't know, something that's in your genes or something that's environmental or that is either going to prop you up or hold you back and you may not even know it. So I hope that when I'm 90, I'm half as active as she is, and I don't think I'm ever going to like gin, but we'll see.
And that's just the thing, is like, it's really weird how there's just some people out there that don't even have to do this, don't even have to watch what they eat, or, like, yeah, they might work out but then their workout might be playing golf, going for a walk, and they're in their 90s. And then you have Seth here. Seth, I'm not bad mouthing you in any sort of way, but you're doing all of these things, and it's like, what if you get to that point, like what I said, like you get to 80, 85, and the doctor's like, yeah, you got a month. It's like, well, fuck, I did all of this stuff. And then that old lady over there, not bad mouthing your wife's grandmother, Grindhouse, or anything. It's just like, it's just so weird that you can pour so much time and effort into it, and it may be for nothing. But again, Seth, you have your reasons, and for you, it's and kind of like what Grindhouse was saying, it's a lifestyle. It's something that you've done for so long, and now it's just like it's who you are as a person, and you like who you are. So it's and you see the benefits and everything. So, and it's one of these, I'd almost compare it to religion in a type of way where it's like, well, there's no harm in at least believing in something. You know what I mean? Like believing in something is almost better than believing in nothing in a sort of sense. So like doing this regiment, there is no harm to it. It's better to actually try it and see if it actually works. Cause shit, I mean, if you're 100 and you feel like you're 65, well, holy cow, then maybe this really does work. And so I find it very admirable. And I kind of like what Grindhouse was saying. It's pretty cool that you're doing this. And something that my wife and I were actually talking about, and it's how like we try to solve everything, especially like in the West. It would be really interesting to have Ro on right now, but I feel like in the Western culture, we try to fix everything with a pill or a shot. And I feel like kind of like what you're doing, Seth, is in a sense like a natural kind of different approach to living healthy. And I find that very cool that it's not something that, you know, can be solved with as something as easy as a shot or a pill. You have to do something to make yourself better. So yeah, just a little tidbit of thought from me.
I mean, that's a good point, Alex. And maybe that's exactly the point of this, is that Seth is not approaching it from a typical Western viewpoint of where I can just pop a pill and everything will be fine. He's doing everything. And that's a different level of commitment. It's a different level of lifestyle. It's a different level of everything, where he's not expecting to just take a pill and things will be fine. He understands that it requires step 1 through 10, and he does step 1 through 10 or 50 or however many every day, sees those results every day, doesn't ultimately know what the outcome's going to be because nobody's got a crystal ball. But I mean, if you can go through your life believing that you're doing what's best for yourself, if you can go through feeling the best you can feel on most days, doing the most you can do on most days, I would say if you get it into your head and it's where you want to be, why not do it? I don't see a reason not to.
What I would be kind of interested in seeing all of this stuff is there anything in particular that would be the cause for the longevity? So like looking at your the PDF file that you had sent, like the sleep, like you say you shoot for, I think it said 8 to 9, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting if the human body really, like, now I do know that the body needs sleep. That's just obvious. But it would be interesting if you could do all of these other things and then therefore you wouldn't need sleep as much. It'd be interesting to see like outliers, like, okay, yes, you can still extend your life and you can actually now stay awake longer without sleeping as long. Like almost, I don't know if that would make, honestly, I don't know if that would make any sense. I don't think it does, but it would be interesting to see like what you could take like in and out from all of this to see like what is the true precursor to make the longevity, or is it everything? You have to do everything or it's not going to work.
That's the hard part with the research, though, is that there's got to be some money behind it, right? Someone's got to pay for that research and pay to have that data collected. And if there's no payoff in the end, nobody's going to do it. I mean, everybody knows that you need sleep. We've been hearing that since, you were a grade school kid. Get your 8 hours of sleep, and your test will be better and everything will be fine. But I don't know that anybody really knows between 7 and 8 hours is where you're perfect, or between 8 and 9 hours is where you're perfect, because there's no there's nothing to be gained financially from any company that does any kind of research. There's no payoff in the end. So why would they bother with the data? I mean, I think it would be great to see too, because like if somebody could show me that if you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your productivity during the day will go up 20%, well, I'd be all over that. That'd be great, but nobody can show me that. I mean, for me, I get maybe 5 hours a night and I just go, and then eventually I crash. That's just what I do. Now, is that what's the best for me? Probably not.
Mhm.
But I don't have a ton of data other than 50 years of being on this planet to tell me that I just keep going. It's what I do, you know? So that's maybe the biggest thing for me is the lifestyle changes and things like that. I think it's obvious. You know, I could lose weight. My blood pressure could be lower. I could do all these things. But I'm always looking at like, so what exactly is the payoff for me? So if I do all these things, what do I get in return? And it's like, is it living longer? Well, you know, living longer is kind of subjective in my head. It's like, I know from my families, like my dad had Alzheimer's. He died of that. That doesn't make me want to live longer. I can tell you that. Watching a parent die of that is a hellacious thing. So I'm not super motivated to care, I guess. So it's just interesting to see it from the perspective of somebody who is super motivated to care and the lengths that they'll go through to do it. And I'll say it again, I applaud it because it seems like I could see it having a lot of different profound impacts on your life, not only just how you physically feel and how you mentally feel, but just in managing stress and managing your day-to-day life, and just, you know, knowing that I'm getting up today and I have to do these things, and they're pretty much set out. They're pretty easy. I can do them. I can get on to the next thing. I can go do my job. I can go visit my family, do whatever it is I have to do. So maybe more from my chair, it's more of the lifestyle thing is really, I think, what is intriguing me about this, and that it is really truly a lifestyle. The people that are into this and really believe in it, it is a lifestyle. And yeah, I say if you got it in you, go for it.
So I just heard everything you said. Am I lagging?
Yeah, just
Hold
a
on.
little bit.
So I'm assuming you can hear me, but there's a lag. I heard everything you guys said pretty much. I think there's an issue. So I have a whole bunch of more things to say. So I'm gonna disconnect and come back on.
Okay, sounds good. In the meantime, we heard a lot from Seth, Grindhouse, Clark. What are your thoughts on most of this stuff now too?
Kind of similar. You said a lot of the things that I was going to bring up, where it was almost like, you know, I call it physical religion. Almost at this point, it's not, you know, if it fills a gap in your life, if it's something you want to do or something you strive to do, or if it just gives you something to, you know, work towards. You know, I see that as just being you're substituting physical health for spiritual health, or you know, or maybe it gives you spiritual health as well, kind of thing. You know, it's good for all of that. You know, whereas someone, you know, I've talked to people who, you know, are religious and they say, you know, they don't thrust it upon anybody, but at the same time they say, well, I needed it for me because, you know, without it, I'm, you know, like this, you know, whether it be they fall into something addiction or you know, their own wiles betray them. So, you know, some people I know that are just religious and they're just like, yeah, well, I do it for my own mental, spiritual health, things like that, you know, and it's good for them across the board. Okay. You know, I've got really close friends who are like, one of my best friends actually is Catholic, and I always thought that his whole family was Catholic because who just randomly decides to be Catholic? You know, it seems like something you would grow up in. And he was like, no, I chose it. I was like, okay, strange, but you know, and he told me the whole backstory. He's like, yeah, he goes, I need it. He goes, it's something I need in my, he's like, I need the rigidity. He goes, I need the rules. He goes, I need the kind of pomp and circumstance. He goes, I actually need that in my religion, or I'm like, he goes, because he's such a wild card naturally as a person. He's borderline feral. So like, he's like, that's the religion I needed for me. And I was like, okay, I can get behind that. I understand it. So it's like, you know, sometimes that's just, you know, you got to fill some kind of gap in your life, or you need something that completes you as a person. And you know, I can kind of see that. Like I said, so I don't look at that stuff and being like culty. Like you kind of said, it comes off as being like kind of culty, but I do see like definitely the religious undertones to it as being something that maybe some, you know, people are missing something in their life, and that kind of fills it. And it's, easier for them maybe to tackle something that's a physical challenge, and actually getting that tactile reward of being physically punishing yourself kind of thing versus you know, maybe going to church and not really understanding what somebody's preaching to you.
Yeah.
Not to get too personal, Seth, but do you feel like this is kind of like a spiritual journey and that this is, like some sort of like there's a, I guess kind of like what Grindhouse was saying, like kind of like what's your purpose for doing all of this? And is there anything kind of, I don't know, yeah, spiritual about it for you? You don't have to answer the question. If it's too personal,
no,
we can move on.
I don't care. By the way, if I lag, tell me, and I'm just gonna connect with my phone and then yeah. But anyway, if I just tell me if I lag. I kind of have those separate. Like I have my spiritual life and faith and stuff, but this particular thing is very mechanical to me. This is just kind of a yeah, it's just kind of the meat machine thing that I do to maintain that vessel. I don't not really, but I get what you're saying. Absolutely. The When it comes to why, I'm physically and mentally better than I ever have been. So that's one reason, but also I just have it's very fun to me. And that's really just it. Also, it bothers me. Okay, so you waste a day and you're just never going to get that day back. That kind of concept just drives me nuts. So if you were to pull out some kind of abstraction, like the idea that we're going to uh have times we waste and we'll never be able to get those back. I even though I fall short a whole lot, I try to make sure that every day is more and more efficient and I get more things done, whether it be creative hobbies, just work that makes me money. All of these aspects I really want to just do the best I can at and kind of see where the next threshold is. Like I used to play way too many video games and stuff, and I still like them, but I that kind of, how you're trying to max out your character and get all the best stats and stuff and this and that in a game. That same kind of like energy and drive is there just in my real world life now. I think I've just kind of transferred that weird kind of obsession of like getting everything lined up really as optimally as I possibly can. Is just, I love it. But yeah, that's my short answer, I guess.
For me, I would say working out is very spiritual for me. There's something about it. I don't know what it is. I listen to a lot of bodybuilders. I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder by any sense or anything, but there's a particular bodybuilder named Tom Platz.
Yeah.
And he even says he's like every time he'd get, or like the squat rack is his altar. And like every time he would squat down, he's not sure if he's going to get back up, but he has to. It's like, it's something like that where it's, I don't know what about working out is like, it's just you and it's something that you accomplish and you feel good. I don't know. That's my take on it. That's really the only thing outside of religion that I'd say is like kind of spiritual for me is just working out. Cause it's almost like you can get into your own world and you're I don't know what it is, but yeah, I know
exactly what you're saying. Those mornings where you're at the gym, there's not that many people there. I like to combine bench press with some curls directly after that lift. I like that kind of full engagement, but you're emboldening that mind body connection. You're listening to your favorite tunes or whatever, and it's just like this special time. And then afterwards you have all those endorphins. You just feel amped. If you're doing something extreme, you're kind of feeling rough afterwards, but the rebound from that is just spectacular. That right after those heavy lifts, and then you're kind of like whatever, and then on the car ride home, you're all of a sudden just like firing on all cylinders. I love it.
Yes, and I agree. And then speaking on like the same lines of like working out, you also had the longevity daily supplement and drug list. If that's what you if that's the one that you want to get into next, I feel like this is
Yeah.
a great segue into that.
Okay. Um,
And we can take
I'll.
one quick pause since he got up, and I got to go grab something too. So let's do
Yeah,
like a
yeah. Let's do
like
it.
a
Let's
hard
do it.
cut,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back. All right.
Ooh, yeah. And Alex, you should mention the app. You should be give me like when we come back to it, give me like a detailed description of your lifting log app because I really like the graph function in it over
Oh
time.
my. Oh yeah, it's so nice. You know what? I'm actually gonna pull it up right now. Now that we have a
Yeah,
little
you
bit of
should
time.
drop that in. We should just dump all our resources in the wherever on the Discord because if someone really gets into this, there'll be so many things they can click on.
Yes, I wish I had my webcam up. This stupid little podcast computer thing only has like 3 USB ports, and then they're all being taken up. As soon as I get close to a wall, I can plug the monitor into the wall directly and get my webcam going. But just a quick breakdown, it like you can look at your volume per workout, sets per workout, workouts per week, volume per week, workout duration, reps per week. It's like it just has everything that you could want. You can look at the breakdown of oh my god, it's so nice. And did you download it or no?
Not yet, not yet. My
Okay.
phone is so full of stuff. But what I'm gonna do is tomorrow I'm going back to Gold's and I'm gonna start using it because I need to. You know when you so my work the past like 3 weeks of work have been kind of stupid and I get weird when I miss my lifting days. I got a few days in here and there, but it wasn't optimal. So I'm attacking it tomorrow, and that's when I'm going to start using it. But what I like, I don't know how it would configure it on the graph, but I will just leave all this in. I go back and forth from just regular. I always like to do full body. I don't like to do splits.
Yep.
I want the whole soreness. If everything is going to be sore after like going past a threshold, I want to be nice and stiff and sore the next day to where I'm stretching out and just focusing on getting that mobility and flexibility back. And it feels so good to get those muscles stretched out when they're like that.
Yeah.
But I want to get back because I used to do this a little more frequently. I've been focused more on 3 sets of 12 to 16 reps, depending on the day. I want to get back to like 10 by 10 strength training. That old style, it's so hard to beat, especially if and this actually will tie perfectly into the rapamycin thing when Clark is back because this is my whole dilemma with the bodybuilding thing. I agree. I'm not trying to be like Mr. Olympia or anything. That I think that is a I respect those guys that do it. Anyone that like just completely transforms their body out of will alone, I have mad respect for.
Yeah.
But it's not it's not going to promote longevity and it's not going to be sustainable. And I don't want to have corrective heart surgery because I've blown out my heart muscle with like what are this? I love some of the steroids these guys take. Like there's Deca, Dianabol, Equipoise. Yeah, the Equipoise is so funny because it's a horse breeding hormone that the guys are like using, and that guy Big Lenny that we've talked about from Delray Misfits, the guy that eats the raw egg in the gym and snots over everything and is like he temporarily turned black because he was taking a peptide called there's a long number name to it, but he was taking melanotan. That's its just kind of regular name. And it increases tissue synthesis like a mofo, but it has a bad habit of having just unregulated melanin production. So you're gaining muscle, your ligaments are healing at unreal rates, but you're also turning black. And it's so funny because he's eating raw eggs and taking his shirt off and just being ridiculous in the gym. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like a black guy.
Oh,
But I saw his live last night. I got a notification, and he's in the hospital because they're trying to drain fluid from his heart. So I
Oh
love
my
that guy so much,
gosh.
but he has his legs are not circulating, and his leg problem has been this long ordeal. But his legs are rotting, and
Yeah.
all the scabs and stuff are not healing, and they're worse now. And he's in the hospital while they're draining fluid from his heart, and he's is expected to be in there for a week while they do this. But the thing is, he's just like, you gotta eat and sleep to grow. You gotta tear it up in the gym. The dude can barely move. In fact, you're familiar with old school bodybuilders, Palumbo. What's his name?
Franco
Yep.
Palumbo? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a condition called Palumboism, where it's when you become insulin resistant and you're taking growth hormone and a bunch of other stuff, and your abdominal wall and muscles won't stop growing. So you get this a distended gut look, and it's because your abdominal muscles won't stop growing.
Oh.
And so Lenny has this in the most, they should call it Lennyism, because
Yeah,
he
they
has it
should.
way worse than Palumbo ever did.
Yeah.
But if anyone is interested, just Google Big Lenny from Delray Misfits. That is a wild rabbit hole to go down. It is amazing. I love the guy. There are times that he has motivated me to go into the gym years ago. I just hate that his approach to building his body is so toxic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But now that Clark's back, we can
Yes.
get on to the supplements and drug list if you want to.
Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm going to scroll down here because it's hard to figure out when I'm going to which ones I'm actually going to. So, like I said in the beginning, there is a whole bunch of stuff I studied extensively, and some stuff has kind of leaked out of my brain. I still take those supplements, etc. Calcium AKG is one of those. It has a really good, when looking at the frailty index of just population. Calcium AKG seems to be extremely good at retaining certain types of strength and um, like energy and like power you're telling your muscles to do. There's like grip strength and all this kind of stuff. Calcium AKG seems to cover a lot of bases. There's a lot of stuff that has fallen out of my head. Calcium AKG is one that I take. Apigenin. Apigenin is a really interesting. It's categorized in the soriferous family. So you've got like all your broccolis and your cabbages and that stuff. The really cool thing about soriferous vegetables is that in populations that eat a lot of these types of vegetables, there is a little longer lifespan and a massive reduction in cancer rates. One of the cool things that are in soriferous vegetables are compounds called soriferous compounds, but one of them is indole 3. And I was in a rush when I was making this list, so I believe I may make a revised version of this, but indole 3 is one that I take religiously. Indole 3, DIM, which is marketed towards women that like menopause and hormonal fluctuations. It really doesn't matter. It's extremely good for men too. DIM is another compound found in these things. Capital DIM. Indole 3 is the other one, and apigenin is the third. Apigenin is really interesting because it gets the mind. It's good to take it at night right before bed because it has a weird characteristic of getting the mind in a relaxed state. There's another one that you can take along with apigenin that's a really good stack. Specifically, there's all kinds of magnesium chelate, magnesium citrate, all of these things. Magnesium threonate is really good for getting the I forget which brain wave it is. I don't want to say delta, but there's a brain wave that it can get like part of one of your lobes in, and it's really good for right before bed. So if you stack apigenin and magnesium threonate, I personally do magnesium threonate, apigenin, valerian root, magnesium, or excuse me, I already said that. And L-theanine, valerian root, magnesium 3 and 8, apigenin, and those things are really good before you fall asleep. Now, if you have trouble, for whatever reason, as the day progresses, my mind gets more and more hyper and alert. I've always been a night owl, and it's not great for longevity. So if you have trouble with that, a really good just kind of hack to do is to take a little bit of it's marketed as ZzzQuil, but it's diphenhydramine. It's just a very low weight antihistamine. It's the same thing that's in Benadryl that you can take to get you into like, oh, I'm getting sleepy, and then you get into sleep, and then the other stuff can kind of keep you asleep, especially if your lifestyle is honed in where you're working out, your heart rate variability is good as a result of that, and you stay in deep sleep. Okay, so the other thing I do for sleep is I have a 8 sleep mattress, and at different stages, I can make it's water cooled. It has a tank and circulates through the top of it, and I can get my mattress down to 55 degrees. And then I have trouble waking up. I'm a slow starter, but then I just burst with energy as the day goes on. So I get myself to sleep, and then when you at certain sleep points in studies and in sleep clinical research where they put people in a bed and monitor them all night, if you're in deep in REM is really good for memory retention and stuff like that. Deep sleep is like your tissue is repairing and all of that stuff. I'm averaging throughout all my wearables and my bed monitors, my heart rate variability, my pulse, my breathing rate, all those things, averaging between all of them. If on a good night, I'm getting around 2 hours of deep sleep stage and about 2 hours of REM, and the rest is the lighter sleep cycles. What's cool about your mattress cooling you and at different times when it detects you're in REM or deep is that if the temperature dips down right at the tail end of when you would normally pop out of deep, it seems that people stay in deep sleep longer when your body stays at a cooler temperature. Now, as I've set my bed to get up to like 105 degrees and vibrate when I awake, so I actually have to get up. It's very uncomfortable. I don't like to be hot when I sleep. So
Wait, your bed gets to 105 degrees?
Oh, no, so I can set it. That's just part of it. Hold on. So I can set my bed to let's see here. I can set it to 110 to wake me up. I can also dial it down to 55 degrees to keep me asleep.
What kind of bed do you have?
It's a 8 sleep, and it's great. Highly recommend it. They also are on Affirm. I did not buy it outright. I'm still making payments on my bed. But it's really cool because if I'm not near my bed, it will send me a text saying it's time to go to bed. So I love it. It's like automated sleep, and I highly recommend it. I also like to, I don't do it all the time, but if you, like I said in the previous thing, if you elevate your legs, you're increasing that cranial pressure. You're keeping your body cooled at different sleep stages, and you can also let the app take over. So when it detects you're in whatever sleep stage, it will either raise or cool the temperature to keep you in that stage. So you can just let it go, and the more you sleep in it, the more it figures out your sleep habits and automates that for you. And I don't even have to think about it. It's amazing. All right, so back to the go ahead.
Do not be surprised if you go to your bed tonight and it's missing and it's at my house. Because that seems like an awesome bed, because my bed compared to your bed is a piece of shit bed. It's like a 2-inch foam mattress.
You should go on the website and look around. They have a few different I got the one that fits over so if you have a bed you like in terms of firmness or softness or whatever, you can get the top that fits over the top of it, and all that. So yeah, you can just shop around. There's different models of them. So okay, back to supplements. Huh?
Is it hackable? Like, could your neighbor?
I hope not. I hope not.
I would,
My
oh
neighbor,
man, I would
my
love
neighbor's
to
gonna
mess
mess
with
up my
somebody
sleep
and
cycles.
just be sitting there being like,
Your neighbor is quietly stewing you while you sleep. That's great.
All right, so we went through because those supplements had to do with sleep, so we got into a little bit of the sleep thing. So I'm going to go down the list. Let's get into the prescribed drugs. They're extremely easy to get now because it's telehealth. There's 4 prescriptions that I take that are longevity drugs: acarbose, rapamycin, metformin, and low-dose naltrexone. Low-dose naltrexone is really interesting because regular naltrexone is an anti what is it when people are on it's an anti-narcotic, so people that are coming off of opioids or stuff, that was what it was originally intended for,
it's a
to help people.
dopamine suppressor.
Yeah, it helps people get off of like pills and stuff. But what's really interesting is in very low doses, like we're talking about like dramatically different doses, they found that it exhibits completely different properties inside you. So the low dose, they've found that it has this amazing ability to suppress tumorous and cancerous growths. There have been people with really late stage cancers where it's halted unchecked growth very well. They're still trying to understand the mechanisms of why it's doing that. It also increases your overall endorphins, and you have a higher pain tolerance while you're on it as a side effect, which is really interesting. Then there's acarbose. Acarbose is really interesting because when you take it, it starts changing the way your gut processes carbohydrates, and there's a little bit of a weird bar to entry. Like it's a little bit uncomfortable stomach things, and then once you get through that, like third or fourth day, I take the normal dose and it doesn't do anything. It helps regulate my blood sugar. So if your blood sugar stays really low and you're not spiking your blood sugar and insulin stuff, you're going to have less disease related ailments from like insulin things. If you're not spiking your insulin and having a bunch of sugar, you're just going to live longer and not have as many disease issues there. Metformin is very similar. It affects blood sugar a lot, which this is going to get into hair stuff. So this is just for the boys. But metformin is really interesting because it's a statin and it helps regulate triglycerides. Now, I naturally have extremely high triglycerides. Um, um, it might be why my testosterone levels are high, because it's like your mother hormone cholesterol and all the fats, and then you get a cascade of hormones from that. Metformin helps reduce the amount of triglycerides. But the thing is, like, okay, if you're someone, you need to talk to your doctor. By the way, I should have said this in the beginning, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just telling you what I do.
I was going to put that disclaimer at the end of the show, but yeah, you're good.
But metformin's really interesting because it lowers triglycerides. So let's say you're somebody you're prone to infections. You have some strange infections that your doctors are trying to figure out. You want to be really careful with metformin because triglycerides naturally encapsulate certain types of infections in your blood, and you get this thing called biofilm. It's the body's natural way of like handling and kind of compartmentalizing, quarantining certain types of pathogens. So be careful with that. But what I'm doing is, like, my company is telling me they're giving me a low dose of metformin. What I'm doing is aware of some of the side effects of metformin. I'm going even lower than that. They're prescribing me 500 milligrams. I'm cutting that pill in half to 250 milligrams daily. That's what I'm doing because I'm just like gonna test the waters and all that. What's crazy is between the low dose naltrexone and the metformin, I have a noticeable shift of sustained energy and mental well-being throughout the day. It's just so noticeable to me. It's ridiculous. Metformin can also, and this might want to be one of the other characteristics. It seems to have some effect in some people where it mildly raises some types of estradiol, which is another thing that I want to talk about. There is a precursor hormone that's similar to estradiol, which you don't want a lot of, especially if you're a male. You want, okay, so with estradiol, there's a precursor. There's 17 beta estradiol, which has been shown. It's a non-feminizing form of estrogen that has been shown in males, low doses. You're talking like a milligram patch a day, to dramatically increase lifespan and a whole bunch of other things. One of the interesting things that it also does is it can protect your hairline if you're prone to thinning. Like its main purpose is longevity purposes, but it's cool to have a side effect that is keeping your hair. So, which also leads me into the boys section of this androgen based, like male pattern baldness. If you're someone that's prone to thinning, there's a couple ways you can kind of go about it. You shouldn't be, ashamed if it's like really bad and it's such an uphill battle. Just shave it. Who cares? But if you're wanting to retain it, there's topicals like finasteride, which is a cool it inhibits the enzyme that helps break down DHT, or breaks down testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. So if you're someone that in your family is prone to high levels of DHT, you should get that looked at. You don't want to completely wipe out your DHT levels because you can get really dry joints. DHT is kind of a joint protectant. So you want to look out for that. You don't want to completely block DHT, but as you get older, some people, the DHT production gets out of control. And it can also lead to prostate issues, enlarged prostate, and cancer risks. So keeping DHT in check is great. Just always get blood panels to know what you're doing. The other topical you can do is minoxidil. It's just a minoxidil. It's a vasodilator, kind of similar to Viagra, originally heart medications. But what it does is it also blocks the enzyme that regulates the rigidity of your arterial walls. So when you take it, you block that enzyme. Therefore, you have more blood flow through capillaries and veins and arteries. Be careful with that, because if you take too much, you can get dizzy because your blood pressure will in turn drop. But for those that are interested in getting a massive pump at the gym and have no issues down there, you can take Viagra before your workout and you can get massive pumps. So if you're doing curls, if you're doing squats, I'm talking about a low dose of Viagra, you can get massive just blood pumped to those muscle groups. And it's an amazing feeling. I know, ha, ha, ha. We're talking about dick medication. It was originally a heart medication. One of the main side effects were massive erections. So they reclassified the drug for boner pills. But you can take it and you can work out while you take it. Don't take too much, because if you do some crazy leg presses, you are going to faint. Trust me, your blood pressure will drop. Then all the blood rushes to your legs and you're going to have an issue. So take really low amounts.
Just walking around the gym with a massive
I really like working out.
Let me spot you, bro.
So yeah. The other really cool thing about taking a vasodilator when you're taking micronutrients, like let's say you're taking fulvic minerals, trace minerals, things like that, you're having better delivery to those sites that you want certain nutrition to go to. So, one of the main factors around hair loss is like insulin issues. So not eating a lot of sugar and controlling your insulin levels will in turn help your hairline. Good proper blood flow. So massaging the scalp, applying things that reduce localized DHT receptor site binding, because DHT, for whatever reason, there's a whole bunch of receptor sites in your scalp that DHT loves to bind to, and in turn it's blocking nutrients to hair follicles that cause them to atrophy and shrink. So if you're blocking DHT, you're taking vasodilators or massaging the scalp to where you're getting blood flow to the scalp, and you're taking micronutrients. Some of the micronutrients I take: fulvic minerals, gelatin, grass-fed gelatin, diatomaceous earth for the silica, all kinds of things, B vitamins. You can take biotin, keratin, etc., and your hair will thank you. So anyway, done with hair talk. Let's check here. Vitamin DK3, obviously. Now for my favorite, rapamycin, because it's going to be a little bit of a conversation. We talked about how it was discovered on Easter Island and all that stuff. Rapamycin has a crazy half-life. It stays in your system for a really long time. So you only take it for longevity purposes once a week. When it was first discovered, it was almost thrown out because the Canadian pharmaceutical company that were gathering all of these things, they were closing up shop, and they didn't want certain research to get out. So the guy that was in charge of stashing this drug in the refrigerator that stayed in this refrigerator forever actually smuggled it out, and later we found a whole bunch of cool uses for rapamycin. But it was originally slated to be destroyed along with a bunch of research when a Canadian pharmaceutical company was either being merged or thrown out or something like that. So rapamycin is a really interesting bacteria. Rapamycin loves to knock out mTOR, which is it's a regulator inside you for cell growth and damage. So, all right, when you get a cut, mTOR activates and you start healing quickly. When you eat a bunch of sugar, mTOR activates. When you, let's see, what else? Oh, if you have a massive amount of meat, which I want to get into because eating meat is extremely healthy, but I don't like this thing where either there's two sides. People always make a religion out of diet. You get either your meat eaters or your hardcore vegans. It always becomes like this thing. Just get blood work. Know exactly what's going on in your body when you eat a thing for a while. Like, know what it is, because then you throw out the argument of all these camps. Like, unless you know what your biomarkers are on a diet, you can't really be like this or that. Because, like, let's say you eat a bunch of meat and that's all you eat, and you have all this change in autoimmune disorder, which a lot of people report when they start carnivore diet. What may be happening is that you're dramatically changing your diet so much that your body is getting a temporary relief from some type of inflammation, but there's no guarantee that won't come back on the new diet after you get used to it. So it's just more important to get blood work done, and also get there's a really cool test called ALA test. You can get your blood measured against a whole grouping of foods to see what you specifically react to, and then you can avoid it. So anyway, that's what I have to say about diets. But meat is important for a few different reasons. If you are someone that just completely avoids meat, any animal-based things your entire life, you're going to run into some issues: loose teeth, falling out hair, pasty skin, the inability to regulate your body temperature. Like vegans that have been vegan for a very long time, one of the classic problems they have is regulating their body temperature. Connective tissue issues. So, like, if you just stop consuming the raw material that you are made out of, like you're made out of meat, if you stop consuming those amino acid profiles, like, what are some of the organs you are rebuilding? What are they being rebuilt with? Plants are good at some amino acids, but there's a lot of amino acids that they just don't naturally produce, like lysine and methionine and stuff like that. Now there's a trade-off. If you're eating a ton of meat, you are also triggering mTOR. Okay, so yeah, the weird thing is with meat is that it can trigger mTOR, specifically methionine. But the thing is and bodybuilding in general, like this whole idea of eating a ton, sleeping a ton, and causing a lot of controlled muscular damage to facilitate growth. The problem is you're activating mTOR for that growth, and perpetual growth is not ideal for longevity, because the more you're triggering your cells to divide
for that growth, you are closing out how many cell divisions you have left in life. The object of the game is to, if you're looking to longevity, like living long and dying quick, is that you want to slow down the amount of times those cells divide without those cells becoming damaged in the first place. So working out is clearly very good for you. It create a controlled stress is really good for longevity. Over stress and over growth is not. So what's cool about rapamycin is its original case use was for it was an organ rejection drug. Organ rejection drugs, you're basically, you don't want your body attacking the new organ you got, thinking it's a foreign body, whatever. So there are these people that are on daily rapamycin and they have to take it forever so that their body isn't constantly in a state of like attacking a new, something they don't recognize. So one of the things that was found out through that use is that it suppresses mTOR, and if you and it has a really long half-life, so it stays in your system for roughly a week. So the longevity protocol is anywhere from 4 milligrams to 14 milligrams once a week, and what you're doing is you're temporarily suppressing mTOR, which is triggering cell division and growth and that kind of thing. Now there's diets that you can follow that will also suppress mTOR. A lot of them, specifically Bryan Johnson, is eating mostly plant-based diet because plants will not trigger mTOR nearly as bad as meat. Now, my whole thing is I look at this as more or less of a dance, and obviously blood results will get you like a better window on what actually is occurring in your own body. So blood panels before and after you do something is always necessary. But the way I see it is if you're going to be a long-term plant-based person, you need to know that there are going to be some risks associated with that. So what I personally do is I'm eating organ meat, I'm eating grass-fed meats, I'm taking grass-fed gelatin and collagen. So I'm getting the raw materials my meat machine needs to replicate those building blocks to have strong cells or strong raw materials for rebuilding bone, joints, ligaments, organs, skin, hair, teeth, all that stuff. Because those cells are constantly being replaced out and have to have those raw materials. At the same time, overdoing meat is not ideal because you're with the methionine in meat, that specific amino acid, you're triggering mTOR. So in my mind, it's a dance. Now, this whole thing, a lot of people are like, well, well, that's not natural, or it's not natural to get. I know that a lot of people have criticized Bryan Johnson for like, okay, it's not natural to get 17 beta estradiol patches and put them on and then eat this way and then take. Well, the point is that it doesn't matter if it's natural or not. The point is to it's biohacking. You're figuring out all the different tricks on all these different biological levers and cell functions to manipulate for your end result, which is less disease and living longer. So it really doesn't matter whether or not it's natural or something you wouldn't find in nature or whatever. You're doing something for a specific outcome, and you're leveraging what you know about all these things, and then you're getting a result. So mTOR is interesting. Rapamycin temporarily suppresses that. You don't want to always just knock out mTOR because like you need to heal. I mean, if your cells don't divide, you'll eventually die. So I look at that like a dance too, because you're pumping the brakes on that cell division through that mTOR pathway. Your cells are dividing slower, therefore you're living longer because there's not an accumulation of genetic damage every time a cell divides. So there we go.
Are there any other supplements or anything else that you're taking that you want to bring up before we move on to, because I'm really interested in the some of the therapies, like the miscellaneous therapies that you had put down, but are there any other supplements or anything else that you want to bring up before we move on to that one?
Not really. I mean, it's if the listeners want to, there's like a bunch of supplements I take for mechanical benefits, and then there's like, for instance, the eye drops are interesting because it's not really a supplement, but it's like this mechanical thing you can do for your eye to reduce the risk of cataracts building up, because it more or less is the way uh, uh, calluses form. There's things like that, but there's garlic for cardiovascular health. There's ginger. There's all kinds of different herbs and different supplements that have different roles in my overall thing. But basically, 80% of the supplements I take are written on that I've dropped in whichever room I did on the Discord.
One supplement that like I saw like the omega and the garlic, and
Mhm.
one that I take pretty regularly is a beetroot, and that
Ooh,
one
yeah.
is like a vasculator, and it like helps
Hmm.
the blood flow, and it's all again it's natural because it's beets obviously, but that one I really do enjoy taking. So what I would say about that entire list is, especially like you as a listener, everything that Seth had said, um, just make sure you do your research. And if you're curious about something, look at the studies on it. Um, because I will say there are a lot of studies out there that, don't have human trials on them. And I'm not saying like on your list specifically, Seth, but
Hmm.
really look at like the site you're using and the amount of studies that have been done on said supplement, because I really don't like the supplement industry as a whole right now, like especially with the influencers and everything,
Hmm.
with like they'll as long as they're an influencer and someone wants to get their supplement out there, they just put like face ripper, or like muscle thrasher, and like kids will buy it. And that's the thing, that's the sad thing about it, is like some of that stuff is aimed towards kids. Long story short, just do your research, know what you're putting inside your body. But yeah,
Absolutely.
we'll move on to some of those miscellaneous therapies now. One of the first ones that you have on there is the sauna.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't. Yeah, go for it.
no, if you have a specific question about it, go for it.
Oh no, I just personally saunas, like I know there's benefits to them, but I rather go for a run or sit on a bike and pedal for an hour than sit in a sauna. There's something about just sitting there and sweating that I just cannot handle. I just do not like
Yeah.
it. I know everyone's different, but
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this goes back to like my whole thing where I obsessively research this like one topic, and some of it has poured out of my head. But basically, look, if you're interested in sauna and ice baths, look up heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins and their role in the telomeres at the end of your chromosomes. They apparently have heavy influences on those. The idea is that we have these genetic switches in us that start uh, altering our biology in extreme circumstances. So, like our ancestors crossing an icy tundra, and the protective benefits of cold shock proteins that have to do with survival, essentially. There are all these survival mechanisms that make your body more efficient and see you through like a really hard period. The human race has been bottlenecked several times, and a lot of crazy stuff has happened. So it makes sense that there are these genetic switches that play a role in survival, and a lot of heat exposure and its function and role in switching on these switches to what do you call it? Your telomeres and those pathways are really interesting. So Dr. Rhonda Patrick does a lot of research on that, and she pulls from a whole bunch of studies, and Andrew Huberman and stuff like that. So, but I really like saunaing. There's a bunch of other things that occur too. There's a thing called there's like this like all cause mortality. It's a term. It basically means anything that isn't like an accidental death. Like if, as long as you're not hit by a bus, all cause mortality is basically like whatever mechanism you die naturally of. If I believe 4 sauna uses a week can dramatically decrease all cause mortality rates in like a group of test subjects, whether they be animals or people. Same thing with cold exposure. And so I like to alternate between them. For me personally, I hear what you're saying about like not liking the sauna. I personally love the sauna. You're also sweating a ton, which is really good for your methylation pathways. So you're excreting a bunch of environmental junk and everything. I hate that woo-woo stuff online where it's like every little thing is like detox and you got to detox and detox. It's like, well, my whole thing about detox is like, what are you talking about? There are specific things that can go into your body that are synthetic or man-made or environmental that are really difficult for your body to know what to do with. Like one of the industrial chemicals out there that are like kind of floating everywhere is benzene. And so there's a thing you can take when we were talking earlier about soriferous vegetables. Broccoli sprouts, broccoli seeds in general contain this compound called sulforaphane that is a very potent trigger of the methylation pathways. So you will start to excrete a measurable amount of benzene that has been caused or that has been shown to cause genetic damage and mutation and all kinds of stuff because your body has trouble getting rid of it. So if you're talking about detox, what specific compound are you talking about, and what's the pathway you're going to eliminate it? When you take sulforaphane, about 2 to 3 hours later, there is a massive amount of benzene excretion through your urine that is measurable. So when we talk about detox, I want to know that it's not just this cosmic detox term that's thrown on everything. I want to know exactly what we're talking about. So benzene can be excreted through sulforaphane. It works in the methylation pathways of the liver and other things. So there's that. But going back to sauna use, when you sweat, you're also doing the same thing. You're improving detoxification of certain compounds that you are either exposed to through whatever line of work you're in, or environmental, or just breathing if you're in a major city or whatever, all the environmental junk that's out there. There's a bunch of stuff that comes out of your sweat. It's good for you. I enjoy sauna use. Now, the flip side is ice plunges are rough. I have a problem with ice plunges, but the way I do it, and I do sauna regularly, and then I do the ice bath. But the ice bath, I'm not as good about as I am with sauning. But the way I remedy that is in the sauna, I get so hot and out of my mind uncomfortable. I go down in the street to my Mapco and just get a few big bags of party ice, throw it in my tub and fill the water up, on cold, and then pour all the ice in, get in my sauna until I'm absolutely miserable. Then I immediately get out and plunge in the ice. And man, you feel extremely weird. It's like a very weird head high. Sometimes if I'm lazy, I'll do a cold shower directly after the sauna. So I'm getting my heat shock proteins and cold shock proteins in basically one session. And there's that. I'm not that old. I'm 34, but like I've noticed that skin doesn't behave as it once did in high school. At least I've noticed that. It's really interesting what happens when you sauna to that degree and then ice bath to that degree. The skin rigidity is insane. Like your skin feels like so completely new. It's very interesting. So cosmetically, that's a nice side effect.
When you say like in the sauna, like are you just like turning it up to like 150 in there and just like staying in there for an wait, say that again?
It's an infrared sauna and it is 170. Now I'm in there. I let about 10 minutes pass to where it actually is, I can noticeably feel it's hot, and then I get in it. And I would say I stay in there from 35 minutes to 45 minutes. And in an infrared sauna, you're heating from the inside out, and you feel it pretty quick, especially if you let it kind of boot up within that 10 minutes and then get in it. I also kind of I have some red lights. I forget the exact nanometer. It's like I want to say like 300 and something nanometer red light diodes. I have some of those that I pair with it. I don't know the exact nanometer, but I have red lights that are supposed to help with capillary circulation. So it's more of an external thing. It's also good for your hair because, you know, the more you're getting your blood to transport through your system, it's good for hair follicles, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so a little bit of red light in my sauna, and I just cook myself until I plunge into the ice. And I feel like that temporary amount of discomfort, I feel like $1 million like an hour later. So there's one therapy.
Oh, geez, Seth. I mean, that's I try to wrap my head around everything that you're doing and everything like that, and it's so I don't know. It's almost like what kind of Grindhouse was saying. It seems like to just jump into everything that you're doing would be so tough. And like, was it gradual for you
Yes,
too?
yeah, it was gradual. I didn't just start doing everything at once. It first really started with intermittent fasting, and then it kind of just escalated from there.
Well, I mean, what is there anything else that any
Unless
other?
I'm on my phone now, so I've got to like do a whole bunch of stuff to get to my list. Unless there's something specific on the list. I remember rebounding and trampoline and occasional like massage therapy. Basically, it's just moving that lymphatic system around. When you get an infection, you're going to notice like a swell up of your lymph nodes, either like under your armpits or neck or whatever. The lymphatic system drains infection and move things around for excretion. Generally speaking, you want that lymphatic system. You know, all of this stuff on this protocol are multi-tiered. There's a whole bunch of different, you know, things you're doing, but generally speaking, if your lymphatic system is moving freely and those lymphatic valves are opening and shutting, which happens when you're trampolining, that force of gravity, those G's that you're experiencing on the down and then the up, you have lymphatic valves that are like opening and shutting, and and especially with like massage therapy, you're manually moving lymphatic fluid around your body, which is just helping you with, you know, whatever your body is struggling with in terms of infection. So there's that. And I don't remember the rest of the list.
You had meditation, probiotics, the
Yes.
water, drinking a gallon of water a day,
Mm-hmm.
and then the ozone blood filtration.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like a therapy that is in certain states. It's kind of hard to come by. Basically, what they're doing is it's almost like a dialysis machine. I'll send some photos of my blood filter when it's done. There's a whole bunch of crud that gets caught in the filter, which is like good. Some of it is fats, but the thing is, like with I've had like issues with the reason I know about the whole infection and biofilm and all that is because I've had some issues with infection in the past. One of the ways your body handles it is it encapsulates it in what we call biofilm. I mean, think of like how dust mites use dust as a house, essentially. The removal of biofilms that are actually the lipids that are actually turning into biofilms, removing those from your blood is like good. Also, when they're doing this, they're infusing your blood with O3 that eventually breaks down into oxygen, and the O3 is also extremely caustic to infections. So doing that killing stuff, there's a thing called die-off. If you have a massive infection in your blood and then all of a sudden you kill it, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you now have to get rid of, and people get sick from that. It's called herxing or die-off, and eliminating those things in your blood after they're dead is pretty important. That's why this therapy, you're like, there's things called spirochetes. So if you have Lyme disease or whatever, more and more hospitals are taking like Rocky Mountain spotted fever or Lyme disease more and more seriously. It used to be kind of like, you're weird and it's like borderline conspiracy if you talk to your doctor about that. Now they have like specialists. Like if you go into the ER, they have specialists that are extremely familiar with these types of infections, which operate differently. They're smaller, and there are these things called spirochetes that can hide, and a lot of like things like normal ways you would kill something, it doesn't affect things. Like that's why a lot of people just accept they have Lyme disease. It's like a chronic illness. But there are things that are extremely caustic to it, and ozone is one of those things. Now, when this is happening, you're not just pumping a bunch of ozone in your blood. You're having a doctor regulate through a gauge how much exposure, because that is also a very oxidative gas. So you don't want like too much of it, and it's being regulated. But it will kill certain pathogens, and then you have to filter that out. So that's one thing. What was the other one? The water. Yeah, the more you drink, I mean, a lot of people are dehydrated. The more you drink, the more you can fully saturate yourself, and you don't have to just pee all the time. So, you know, water, preferably reverse osmosis, very clean. You just drink a ton of it and stay hydrated. We're mostly water. It's like kind of the matrix that everything operates in, all these mechanisms we're talking about, because you are just mostly water. What was the other thing you mentioned? I forget the other thing.
Meditation.
Oh yeah, meditation's great. I like it because there's this and you can actually bring up your app now that we're talking about apps. There's a cool wearable that I just got into called Whoop. It's basically just an advanced version of Fitbit. What's cool is you can like compete with there's like scores you get on like your heart rate variability and all of that kind of stuff, and what your body is rested versus the stress you undergo, like workouts. So you can compete with people in your area on who can get to the top of like high performing workouts or having the most optimum recovery, which is cool. And then you have a app where you can track your lifting progress, and then it spits it out into a graph that you can see your progress through, which I'm going to actually start tomorrow when I start doing my heavy lifts.
Yeah, the app is called Fit Notes, and by no means am I like promoting this or anything like that. There's plenty of apps out there. The reason why I chose to do this one and the reason why I like it is because you can add your own workouts into it. They already have like pre-made exercises and everything, and it's really streamlined. And when you open up the app, it's essentially just blank, and it says workout log empty, and then you can either start a new workout, or there's like a plus button at the very top, and then you just go down to like a body part that you're working out, so you can add that, the sets, the reps, the time. It's very nice. And like kind of like what Seth was saying, once you have like a week or month, a year, added to the app, then you can start breaking. You can pull up in the settings. It's like analysis, and you can start seeing like how much volume, how many reps, how many sets, what specifically are you working more. Like if you're trying to do a full body, like that month, did you just focus on your legs? When it's like, all right, now I need to adjust. It's very, very intuitive, and it's really nice. So if you're looking for an app that is really kind of gives you some feedback, this would be it. But if you're also looking for something that's pretty easy to use, I would also suggest this. I've been using this app since 2016, and it's really fun to look at like the years and just look at all the charts and everything. So I suggest checking it out if you don't have something and you're looking to track your workouts, because like Seth was saying, because we were talking the other day, just writing your stuff down in a notebook can get kind of like it's hard to see your progress. So this is just a way to do that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. If anyone else has anything to say, yeah, again, I'm not a doctor. This is just what I do. Talk to your doctor, especially if you have any kind of medical conditions. Like, don't just like jump into something. Always get blood work. Talk to your doctor. Know that it's not going to interfere with anything. And but yeah, I mean, the cool thing about all these open protocols is that it does not matter what I don't know, walk of life. You can appropriate, you can pick and choose what you think it would be best for you to do, and just do a portion of it. Like, just a portion is better than nothing. And you know, if you choose it, you can. It's just cool that we have all of this research that's just widely available.
Agreed. So yeah, last minute thoughts. Grindhouse, Clark.
Boy, well, I think you sort of said it a few minutes ago when you said it feels overwhelming. Like there's so much to it. It really is, because I'm thinking about it and I'm like, well, you know, a lot of what's being said here makes sense, and a lot of it's just simply making the decision to take better care of yourself. And then once you've made that decision and you're firm in it, it's like the sky's kind of the limit, right? You can do anything. So I think this is if nothing else, it's a great template. And then to what Seth said, it's like you can pick and choose what part of it's going to suit your lifestyle. But I think ultimately the goal being a better lifestyle, you know? So, no, there's definitely some things here I'm going to look into. A couple of things that Seth said were interesting to me, like it piqued my interest, like, okay. You know, I know that thinking about all this, the thing that my head keeps coming back to is, like I said earlier, I'm a few months away from being 50 years old. So is it quote unquote too late? Now, I would argue no, and that to think that is something of a defeatist strategy. But at the same time, it's like I think about, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and work out. And it's like, well, I've already got a shoulder that falls out if I look at it wrong. In the last like 3 months, I've blown out an Achilles. I tore a calf muscle, and this is just like doing shit around my yard. It's like, so, but at the same time, it's like, if I engaged in something like this, would those kind of things happen less often? And would I be less prone to injury? And my gut tells me probably. So it's just interesting that there are all these things available, and that there are people that are super into it. And to be perfectly honest, it's good that the way that Seth comes about this, and he says it every single time, do your research. So it's not going off half-cocked and just throwing shit at a wall and see what sticks. It seems like it's really well thought out. It's an interesting plan. It's making me think about the things I do every day, and maybe I should do them differently. So that's kind of my last thought.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot to go through, a lot I kind of want to look into more, and just you know, some of these I would be open to checking out and you know, taking advantage of them. I mean, I can't see there being a downside to trying or even doing it on a consistent basis. Other than that, I'm gonna go eat some chicken wings and play Starfield.
Well, I
Does sound like a good Sunday.
I think at the end of the day, Seth, I think we're all pretty impressed with your dedication and the amount of time and energy that you've spent researching, you know, just trying new things, and you know, like you're going through it and you're doing it, and it's very respectable and commendable. And you have all this data and you're analyzing it, and I feel like it's something that, just after this talk, I feel like it's something that you're going to continue to do probably for the rest of your life. I feel like it's something that it's a part of you now. And again, it's super commendable, and it's cool to see it. And I'm excited to kind of see how this all plays out. Because we'll all be here, we'll all see your progress. So when we're old and we can't move and you're running miles and you're doing stuff and we're just sitting here, it'll be it'll be proof that this all works. So, and any last thoughts or anything that you want to tell the audience before we sign off?
Well, I just, thanks. But I mean, I appreciate an episode where I can just rant about this, where it's not per our usual topic, but I just love it. It's fun. It's been fun.
Yeah, and you, the audience member, hope you enjoyed it. A lot of information. We'll put a lot of links and different things that we have talked about today in the description. So if you're interested in any of this, especially the what's his name? What was it? Ryan Johnson? No, what's his name?
Bryan. Yeah, Bryan Johnson.
Bryan Johnson. Yeah, we'll put that so you can go check him out and his weird ass family. No hate or anything. But yeah, go ahead, check out our merchandise store, check out the social medias. And you know what?
One last thing before
Yeah.
you sign off. If there are any listeners that are males with a type A blood type that are 18 years to 20 years, and you're willing to meet me at a location and give me like a pint of blood a week, I will make it financially lucrative for you. But there's a bunch of paperwork you have to sign first. But that's all I had to say.
I was wondering if Seth was going to get around to asking for a blood boy, and here it is. Outstanding.
Seth's blood boy. Oh, we're gonna make that into a shirt. I gotta write that down. All right.
As
just remember,
as long as I'm just on the hill while he's doing sprints, I'm gonna make sure he sprints before I get the blood. I'm coaching him. Just a little direction there. Sorry.
just remember, we don't want stuff that's normal. We want stuff that's effing weird.